It was a calm Thursday morning in Bethesda, Maryland, and Officer Frank Henderson was on his usual patrol. After 15 years in law enforcement, Frank's badge had started to weigh heavy on him. The honor he once felt had faded, replaced by frustration and routine. Among his peers, he had developed a reputation for making snap judgments a trait he considered a necessary skill rather than a flaw. As Frank half listened to the police radar, his attention was caught by a sleek black SUV speeding past his cruiser. Without hesitation, he switched on his siren and pulled the vehicle over. Approaching the driver's side, Frank found himself face to face with a black man in his mid-40s. The man, calm and composed, greeted him with a polite "Good morning, officers." Frank, however, didn't return the greeting, license, and registration. He demanded curtly. The driver complied, handing over his documents. His name was George, a professional chauffeur with over 10 years of experience. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Frank asked, scanning the paperwork. "No, officers," George replied, his tone still respectful. "You were speeding," Frank claimed. "I don't believe I was," George answered politely. His calm demeanor only seemed to irritate Frank further. "Are you arguing with me?" Frank's voice sharpened. "No, to her. I've been keeping to the limit," George replied. Ignoring George's composure, Frank ordered him to step out of the car. Hesitant but compliant, George did as instructed. Stepping onto the shoulder of the road, Frank began questioning him aggressively, but he didn't notice the passenger quietly observing from the back seat of the SUV. That passenger was none other than Justin Trudeau, wanting a low-profile trip to an event in Washington. Trudeau had chosen to ride without a motorcade or media entourage, but this peaceful ride was quickly derailed. As Frank continued his interrogation, the rear window rolled down, revealing Trudeau's unmistakable face. "Is there a problem here?" Trudeau asked, his tone calm yet authoritative. Frank frowned. The realization of who he had profiled hit him like a ton of bricks. Struggling to find words, he stood in stunned silence. Trudeau leaned forward slightly, repeating the question. I asked, "Is there a problem?" "No, sir," Frank stammered, instinctively stepping back. "Good," Trudeau said, his voice steady but firm. "Then maybe you can explain why you pulled over my driver." Frank's confidence evaporated. He fumbled for an explanation, but his voice came out as an incoherent mumble. George stood quietly, his dignity intact, while Trudeau's sharp gaze remained fixed on the officers. Trudeau didn't raise his voice, but delivered his words with a gravity that made passing drivers slow down to witness the scene. "Let me make this clear," he began. "You just harassed an innocent man doing his job because of assumptions you made about him. That's not how this works in the Canada I represent, and not in the world we strive for." Frank's hand tightened on his belt, but he remained silent, his authority crumbling. Trudeau concluded, "You're going to let George get back in the car, and you're going to leave us alone. Understood?" Frank nodded stiffly, unable to muster a response. George climbed back into the driver's seat, and the SUV drove off, leaving Frank humiliated on the roadside. Little did he know, his day was about to take an even worse turn. Back at the precinct, Frank hoped to brush off the incident, convincing himself that no further consequences would follow. After all, how could anyone have predicted that Justin Trudeau would be riding in a random SUV? However, as he entered the precinct, the tension in the air was palpable. Some colleagues avoided eye contact, while others exchanged knowing glances. Before he could settle at his desk, Captain Roberts summoned him to the office. "Take a seat," Roberts said curtly, sliding a tablet across the desk. On the screen was a video clip that had already gone viral. A passing driver had filmed the entire exchange, capturing Trudeau's scathing words. The audio was clear, and the accusations of harassment were echoing across the internet. "This," Roberts said, pointing to the screen, "isn't just a mistake, it's a national disgrace." Frank tried to defend himself. "Captain, I didn't know it was." Roberts cut him off. "That's the problem, Anderson. It shouldn't matter who he was. You racially profiled a man doing his job, and now the whole world knows." Frank's protests fell on deaf ears. Roberts handed him a suspension notice. "Turn in your badge and gun, effective immediately." As Frank left the office, he felt the weight of every gaze in the precinct on him. His career, once a source of pride, was unraveling. Meanwhile, at his hotel in Washington, Trudeau made a call to the local police commissioner. His tone was calm but resolute. "This isn't about me," Trudeau said. "It's about principle." That officers jumped to conclusions. without even checking who else was in the car. I can't let that stand. The commissioner assured Trudeau that action would be taken, but Trudeau wasn't satisfied with vague promises. Determined to see change, he instructed his legal team to file a formal complaint against Frank Henderson, citing abuse of authority and discrimination. The media picked up the story, fueling nationwide outrage. The hashtag #JusticeForGeorge began trending, with millions condemning Frank's actions. An internal investigation soon followed, uncovering a pattern of complaints about Frank's behavior. George, now thrust into the spotlight, handled the attention with grace. In a televised interview, he shared his perspective. "I'm not angry," George said. "I'm just disappointed. People like Officer Anderson make it harder for hardworking individuals like me to do our jobs without fear." His calm, dignified response won over the hearts of many. Even Trudeau called him personally to commend his professionalism. "You handled that better than most people would," Trudeau told him. "I respect that." As the investigation concluded, Frank was officially terminated from the police force. The precinct issued a public apology, promising to implement new training programs to address racial bias. George, meanwhile, received an outpouring of support. Trudeau even invited him to an event as a gesture of goodwill. This incident became a reminder of the importance of accountability and respect. It showed how a single moment could spark change and highlighted the resilience of those who rise above adversity. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories. Have a great day.